Hi, my name is Ernie Kleiman, and today I'm going to talk about making homemade Luthier clamps in your shop using leftover scraps of material that you probably have already in your scrap box, that you can make some really inexpensive clamps. If you need 50 Luthier's clamps, they can get mighty pricey from the retail store. And so I'm going to talk very briefly about how to make a homemade Luthier clamp, or at least the way I do it, and just using leftover scrap from the wood shop. Here's an 8-inch clamp that I use, and it's basically a piece of 1.25 inch by 8-inch long piece of southern yellow pine that's biscuit jointed to a piece of, in this case, birch, or it could be maple, or whatever hardwoods you have on hand, scrap, that you line up in a square joint over here. And in this picture over here, I basically just used biscuits, 4 biscuits, small biscuits, to laminate this together and glue it together. Once this is glued together, I reinforce the joint with a long screw, about 3 inches long, to hold this base assembly together so it doesn't fall apart when you apply pressure via the dowel. Now, the bottom part, I always put a piece of cork so I don't mar any of my work surfaces. The top, this part over here, basically has a threaded rod that goes through here, and you can do very light gluing tasks with it by applying pressure to the bottom. Now, to make this part of the clamp, you'll need a 3/4 inch dowel. And the best woods are tight-grained hardwoods. Sometimes you can buy them at hobby stores, especially the ones from China like birch or maple, for a really low price. If you don't have access to that, you can turn them on your lathe. In this sample here, I've got maple and redbud, which is not a very common wood. This one over here is made out of a piece of pearwood that fell down in our backyard with an inexpensive birch handle. So basically you can make a lot of these parts using leftover scraps from your house, or if you don't have access to a lathe, you can get dowels from the hobby store or your local lumber yard or lumber store. Now, here's some really nifty tools that I've found many uses for making jigs, for making clamps, and you'll find many uses for it in the home wood shop. It's basically a tap and die set. This one I purchased from Woodcraft for about $30 a few years ago, and I've really gotten my money's worth out of it because I've made a lot of dowels and a lot of clamps out of it. Basically, you put the dowel through here, and it creates the threaded portion on your dowel. And typically, the dowels have to be slightly undersized. It says it's 3/4, but in actuality, when you put the dowel through here, it should be closer to 18.5 millimeters, which is a skosh underneath 3/4 of an inch, which is actually 19.5 millimeters. So make sure that your dowel is slightly undersized when it goes through this hole here, or else it will jam up, okay? And make sure when you're putting this through that you put plenty of gear oil or linseed oil. Make sure there's a lot of lubricant on the dowel, otherwise it'll get very hung up on the dowel and create a lot of cracks and whatnot. And make sure your dowel stock is nice and dry. That's why I recommend the hobby shop or a home center where you can get nice dry wood. If you're going to be using wet wood, don't forget your dowels will shrink and contract and expand and create a lot of problems. Now, the second part of this wood threading kit is a tap, and you can make the tap do all the work that you want by cutting a hole in your project. Like in this piece over here, this long gluing clamp that I've used, I've basically put the tap through a 1.5 inch piece of oak, and on the threaded portion, the male portion, is basically 18.5 millimeter dowel stock from the hobby shop. It happens to be Chinese birch, which also works quite well. The best woods for making the threaded portion are hardwoods like maple, beech, birch, all the tight grain, close grain woods that don't have too many open pores make good dowel stock. And here's this piece, and you take the threaded portion, and this piece, it's on a piece of oak. the threading can be done in a hardwood that is not close grained. In this case, I'm using white oak scraps that were left over in the shop. And you basically use the tap. You have to drill a hole in it first with a 5/8 of an inch bit right straight through, and then you countersink the top and the bottom to make it easy for this tap to create its own threads. And go slowly, take your time, and keep making sure that your threads are nice and clean. After every use, make sure you wipe off all the dirty threads here that come in contact with the wood. And you can use gear oil or linseed oil, or even vegetable oil, anything convenient. So as you're cutting the threads, you don't lock up and split out any of the wood on the inside. It's going to make a nice clean cut. And then once everything is ready, as you can see over here in this scrap piece of oak, this one was also biscuit jointed together over here. You can see it better on the side. It's not perfection, but it works. And I reinforce it with a 3-inch long screw on either end so it doesn't compress. And remember, you can only use this for light gluing tasks. It's really not suitable. It doesn't have the same clamping pressure as a guitar clamp, but it works great for doing light gluing shop tasks around your luthier shop. And this piece on the bottom, I've used some automotive gasket, but you can use a piece of leather, a piece of foam, anything that's nice and soft that will absorb the back of your project so you don't mar it and create all kinds of dents, especially in softwoods like cedar and spruce. And then you just thread through the rod, and it takes a little bit of time. It's kind of an old school method, but it really works. And then you just clamp your project together. And here we'll just clamp, as a sample, a piece of scrap piece of Chinese 3/4 inch, what do you call it, plywood, just to show you as a demonstration. And that completes the tutorial on making inexpensive luthier clamps in your home wood shop using materials that you might have lying around or might have to scrounge from your local hobby store. Thank you. If you have any more questions about making this clamp, please contact me at www.ateliertommy.com, spelled www.ateliertommy.com. Have fun!